Okay, perfect. All right. So I'm assuming you can hear me now. Or can I get could you maybe text in a thumbs up just so I know we're good? Perfect. Okay. All right. So today we're going to be doing the mini cooking class. So essentially we're going to be doing pasta. We're going to do it in two different ways. First way, it's one sauce, but two different options. So I have a vegan vegetarian option, and then I also have a chicken option as well, since I'll eat both. But yeah, so I really like to do this a lot in my first year, more so in my second year when I had an actual kitchen and I didn't have to prep it in the sixth floor kitchen of OPH. But yeah, this does work anywhere in residence if you have access to the sixth floor kitchen. I don't know if we do this year, and it might not be as easy, but if a friend preps it for you, you can also heat it up really well in the microwave. So yeah, so basically it's just consists of a tomato garlic sauce that we're gonna do. It's super, super speedy. And then a chicken option where we do a braised chicken in the pan, and then there's also a ground soy, veggie sauce option as well. So yeah, I'm just gonna get started. If my back is turned to you, I'll turn around in a second, but I'm just gonna have to be scooching over in a chair. All right, so the first thing that you're gonna want to start off by doing is getting all your ingredients together. So I have a list because I tend to have this list in my brain and not actually out on paper. But the first couple things you're gonna need are your veggies. So you can get garlic, onion, tomatoes. I like to use crushed tomatoes in the can and real tomatoes, just because there's a little variety in the texture. It tastes a little bit more homemade than just plain tomato sauce, but that works as well if you have it. I like to have another veggie in there, so I use bell peppers or carrots. Today I'm gonna probably use a bell pepper, and then also you're gonna need, I think I said an onion already, a medium small onion as well. And then if you have cornstarch, you're just gonna need a little bit of cornstarch, which isn't really a veggie, but a potato is. And if you don't have cornstarch, then you can use a potato, and I'll show you how to do that, or I'll talk about it. And then you're also just going to need some oils or liquids. So olive oil, or butter, or a butter alternative. I'm going to be using the vegan butter, and I also have olive oil for that as well. And then you're also going to want some warm hot water to just add into the sauce, or add into the pasta as you go. Also going to need to have your spices and seasoning. So this is to your taste. At the most basic level, you probably need to have Italian seasoning. I would say salt and black pepper. But since we want to have a little bit more flavor, and I really like spices, I'm going to be putting in cayenne pepper, salt, black pepper, red chili flakes, Italian seasoning, a little bit of honey. Let's see what else is going in here today. Thyme, and then onion powder and garlic powder, just so that there is a little bit more of that concentrated flavor. But I'm going to be using the real garlic cloves and the real onion as well, just so it tastes super yummy. And then the other thing we're going to be needing for the protein, you can pick if you're going to use chicken or veggie. You can do it without any of the added protein to it, but for a balanced, healthy diet, I would say to find something to use. If you don't want to use the soy ground that comes in a little package, you can also use white beans, black beans, chickpeas are really, really good too, lentils. So whatever makes you happy, but make sure you have something in there so that it's not just pasta, unless you want just pasta. And then of course you're going to need any pasta of your choice. So I used to just allow spaghetti. Spaghettini is my favorite. I can use rotini, penne, fusilli pasta, anything that you have on hand basically, and that's kind of the great thing about it. So today basically what you're going to see is we're going to do the sauce together and the protein together. And then for the pasta, I've already have that set on the side just for time's sake, so we can keep it neatly tucked in the hour. But yeah, so we're going to start off with the sauce, and then I'm going to start with the ingredients for the sauce, and we're going to do the proteins of it, and we're going to get it all together. So basically for the sauce, what you're going to need are the, let me see this. And we also have Maya here as well, who can answer any questions in the chat. So if I'm busy doing something, I will check back occasionally just so I can keep my eyes on what's going on. And if you have any questions, be sure to ask. But if not, then we'll just get started. So for the sauce, you're going to want to grab the onion, garlic, tomatoes, and crushed tomatoes. You're also going to want to get all your spices together. We're kind of going to do the spice mix that we're going to use for everything right away. We're just going to put it all in a bowl and kind of like use a little bit of it as we go. Also get that bell pepper, and then we're just going to chop it all up. So I already have my chopped like fresh tomatoes in here. And I have a can of crushed / like diced tomatoes. You're probably going to want to use about like 1 to 2 medium tomatoes, depending on how much you're making. Since I'm making basically this recipe times 2, I've used 2 medium tomatoes, just like kind of just thickly chopped, like they're just kind of big chunks of tomato. And then I have diced tomatoes that like are like kind of crushed a little bit smaller that are going to be good for the sauce. And then I also have the 1 bell pepper here that I'm going to get chopped up. And then I also have an onion as well. So essentially, I've already washed my hands. But make sure you do that, especially in these COVID times, because if you're cooking for other people, you want to make sure that you're not spreading germs, because that would be gross. So yeah, I like to use about just like 1 bell pepper. You can kind of put this in slices, or you can dice it however you want. I don't really mind because it's all kind of going in one pot, and it's going to simmer down pretty nicely. So I just kind of like to get it in chunks and then put it on the side, which is perfect for like small bites, or just like if you're gonna like shovel this down before class, that way it's like it's pretty fast and pretty edible. But yeah, so you're gonna chop up that bell pepper however you want. I don't really mind it being in big chunks. I kind of like things to have big chunks in them. That sounds kind of gross, but I do like to have things to be a little bit heartier, rather than like kind of thinner sauce. But if you do like something that's a little bit closer to like your regular spaghetti sauce, that's totally fine to use. You might just want to like puree the bell peppers. And that's what you can use a little bit of hot water for. So you can add like, I'd say the 1 bell pepper and like a 1/4 cup of hot water, and just blend that with maybe like 1 of the tomatoes, and that'll be a really quick way to do that sauce as well. So I'm just gonna have these chopped up. And then once they're chopped up, I'm just gonna put them on the side for now, just because I don't need them right away, but they will be good to have around later. But yeah, I don't know if anyone like likes making their own pasta sauces. Maybe you do it with your family, or maybe you just kind of start to do it since coming to university. So either way, if you have any like tips or tricks that you'd like anybody else to know, you can put them into the comments. But for now, I'm just gonna put these on the side and like my little pink bowls that make me really happy. But yeah, so like while we've been in quarantine, I don't know if anyone was doing a lot of cooking over the past couple months. I know I was, because there wasn't much else to do, but like not to maybe like, go for a walk or read a book or something like that. But I definitely spent a lot of time like doing my self-care with cooking. So I hope that you enjoyed this too. But yeah, so we have about like I say 1 mini bowl of red bell peppers. This is probably equal to about like a 1/2 cup, maybe a little bit more than that. I have 3 cloves of garlic, and kind of right now I'm just doing the prep for the sauce and protein, but we'll see that in a second. So you're just gonna like thinly slice, or you can dice your garlic as well. But I prefer, like I said, slices and things in bigger pieces. I might chop a little bit of it up just for when I'm cooking things down a little bit smaller. But for now, the slices are probably going to work just fine. And you see, there we go. Yeah, so you might be wondering why. Let's see. Lots of cooking on my end. Yes, absolutely. I hope there is. Like, cooking is like a really good way to just like take a little bit of time for yourself and really not have to focus on anything else but you, which is kind of nice. Especially because we're in such like a go kind of world. Once you get to university and the semester starts, it can be really hard to just take a little bit of time and focus on like spending time with yourself and just giving yourself a break. And I encourage you to do that. Maybe sometimes you want to go to Coleman's if that's easier, or hopefully we have other options on campus. You can check those out as well. But in the meantime, when you have like say a full day of classes, it's nice to give yourself maybe like half an hour to an hour to really like focus on making your food. Just like thinking about what's going into your body, and like how like that can feel really good. Like you take it as like this little accomplishment for yourself. So yeah, I just have about 3 cloves of garlic chopped up that I'll be using for the sauce and each of the proteins. I would say about a clove of garlic each, just because we're also using garlic powder and onion powder, each of course for their own reasons. But yes, so next we're gonna chop that onion. So I have about like 1, let's call it like small medium onion with me. And I'm gonna cut this into three pieces. So we kind of cut it in like a third of half. It's like a thin half slice, and then like 2 other chunks here. I'm gonna save these on the side for the protein that I'm doing, and I'm gonna use this like third of an onion for the sauce. So you can again just chop this up. I chop it across where like the rings are, so that it kind of dices a little bit for me as well. But yeah, I like thin slices. I really do. But you might want to do some thinner, like some smaller slices or dices if you want for the protein. You'll see in a second, depending on, of course, like what the people you're serving it to want, what your roommates want. But you'll see this is really easy to prep like ahead of time. Maybe in the morning when you don't have class until like 1, or maybe it's not until later in the evening. You can do like a bit of this prep earlier, and that can make it really easy to kind of just do like dinner all in one. So I'm also going to put this into the bowl with the garlic, just because onion and garlic are usually cooked together, and I usually start off any meal with that. But yeah, I'm just going to take the other two and also slice them up. Since they were cut in half already, we're going to do some smaller slices, which is going to be pretty good. And so like about the total prep time for just like getting all the veggies in check, should probably only take you about like really 5 minutes. Which isn't too bad when you think of it. That's like one intro song, or like one intro plus the first couple lines of a Netflix show. So it's really not too bad. I'm just going to put this in a separate measuring cup just to separate it out, since I will be needing to adjust this directly. Maybe anybody can comment their favorite Netflix shows to watch right in quarantine or the past couple of weeks, just as you've been getting ready for back to school. Hopefully like still getting a little bit of time to watch those. I know for myself, I was watching all of the Fosters again, probably the 3rd or 4th time now. How to Get Away with Murder just came out with a new season, which is really exciting, and I'm really excited for the last to see how it all ties in together. For the tomatoes, those were already pre-chopped, but this is the equivalent of about like 2 probably like small fist-sized, medium-sized tomatoes. But yes, I'm gonna have those there. And while I'm sitting here, this is a really good time to like turn your stove on and start heating up the pan. I'm going to use the farthest one away from me because you really should not be sitting at the stove, but alas, here we are in this situation now. But yes, so I'm going to get the stove heated up. You're going to want to put it on about like medium low heat just to begin with. I would say like if you're using like the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 ovens, and assuming residence ovens are kind of like a little bit of fluctuation, but I would just start out with probably like I would say add the onion and the garlic first, and a little bit of olive oil. You can use butter if you'd like to make the sauce like a little bit creamier, or a butter alternative. But I find that like olive oil adds a really nice flavor when you're doing like tomato sauces. For like Alfredo-based sauces or like cream-based sauces, I would probably put butter in it instead. But whenever you're working with like a veggie-based anything, I would say olive oil is probably a nicer option, or any kind of oil that you like to use, like coconut. That's probably my second favorite, but that is expensive sometimes. So trying to keep this budget friendly. Yeah, I would say have your olive oil and add maybe about like a capful, or the equivalent of that is like maybe a tablespoon. There you go. Like I had a little bit more because I'm making a bit more today, but if you're doing this for one, so far just to recap, you'd have about maybe a third of a cup to half a cup of bell peppers, 1 tomato chopped up, 1 clove of garlic chopped up, and about half an onion that you're going to need for everything. I did mention potatoes earlier. I have cornstarch, so I'm probably not going to use the potato. But what you can do is you can take like a little potato like this, like the super small baby ones that you can heat up in like oven roast, which are really yummy. But just chop this up essentially into like 2, 3, 4 little pieces. Add a little bit of hot water and blend it. And you can put that into the sauce. And because potatoes are super, super starchy, they bind really well and like bind sauces together really, really well. And yeah, they'll act kind of like as a cornstarch thickener. I would use the blender, but that would be super, super loud. So instead, I'm probably just going to use cornstarch. But yes, I'm just going to kind of mix everything that I'm going to use together to start with. So I'm going to take probably about most of that onion that I diced, just because that is nice, I find, for the sauce. And then I'm going to grab my measuring spoons. And I'm going to take like what's the equivalent of probably like just like under half a tablespoon or just over half a tablespoon of the garlic cloves. I don't really mind what sizes they were, but if you wanted to use your diced ones, I would use the diced for this. If you do like those smaller pieces. And once your oil should be like starting to heat up pretty nicely, I'm going to try it up a little bit. You're just gonna add those in whenever you're ready. But in the meantime, before we do that, we're going to do our spice mix. Don't mind me hopping around here while I have a cast on my foot. But essentially, you're just going to grab your spices and mix them all together. Just because we're going to be using, to keep it easy, the same set of things for the next little bit for everything. So I'm just going to grab one big bowl, essentially. And I'm going to use like my core spices for this, which are going to be onion and garlic powder, and then cayenne pepper, also black pepper, because just variety. A little bit of white pepper, again, variety. And then you got to use some salt. Usually it brings flavor into it. If you want to do a lower salt thing, then you can think about maybe limiting if you're putting less in the meat or the less in the protein option that you're using. And maybe you just want to salt the sauce because that really helps like bring out some of the flavors in each of like the veggies that you're using. So I'm going to go grab those measuring spoons again. But you're going to mainly focus on the teaspoon for each of these. I just find it's easier that way. So yeah. So I'm going to make this times 3 essentially, but I'm going to be using, let me find a way to put this down while balancing 1 foot. There we go. Yes. So I'm going to be using about 1 teaspoon of salt per batch that you're doing. So I'm going to use, actually, you know, we can do a half teaspoon. Let's do a half teaspoon to start with. And you can salt as you go if we wanted a little lower salt. So you would use normally 1/2 teaspoon, but I'm going to do 3 because I'm going to use this for 3 different things. And then after your salt, you can do the black pepper. So again, I'm going to do about 1/2 teaspoon of this just because I am adding like cayenne and white pepper as well. You don't have to be like too like flaming hot spicy unless you really want flaming hot spicy. But yeah, I'm going to use about 1.5 teaspoons for me, but 1/2 teaspoon for you if you're doing 1 serving. And then for garlic and onion powder, to be completely honest, I normally just shake in enough, but how much I would be shaking in is about probably like just about, again, 1/2 teaspoon or just under 1/2 teaspoon. Same thing for onion powder. These I like to go a little bit lighter on just because if I am putting real like onion and garlic in there, that's a lot of onion and garlic, unless you really do want it to be that way. And then for the cayenne, I really like things to be spicy, but cayenne pepper can definitely have quite a kick, but it has a lot of flavor. So for this, just so that potentially my roommate will be able to eat those later, I'm going to do just one teaspoon in mine overall. So maybe you're doing like 1/4 teaspoon. And I'm just going to grab a spoon, and we're going to mix that together. And this way, when you do your spice mix ahead of time, it kind of just like cuts down on the prep time for everything else. And as you're adding and you're seasoning things with like give or take a few like changes or switches you're making for ingredients, it can just like cut down your prep time. And if you do this ahead of time before, then it really won't be that hard when the time comes to do it. So I'm just gonna add some Italian seasoning. I really like this with my tomato sauces. It's really good with Alfredo or like cream-based sauces as well. But trying not to do dairy, so we're going to go with the tomato sauce today. And I'm going to shake in about probably 1.5 teaspoons again of that. And we're just going to mix that in. And I really like the flavor of thyme, so I'm also going to add, like, we're going to call it 3 shakes of thyme to that as well. There we go. So yeah, once you have that mixed up, we're going to go back over to the stove, and our oil should definitely be heated up. I'm going to turn this way down because sometimes if it's too hot. We're just going to add in another tablespoon the onion and the garlic. And then I'm also going to add in the bell peppers now just because I do want them to cook down pretty soft because they were a bit crunchy. Which is how you would normally want a bell pepper to be, but for the sake of sauce making, you probably want it to soften out quite a bit. And I'm just going to leave that for about, I want to say 3 to 5 minutes, and in the time that we're doing that, we're going to move over to prepping the protein that we have. So for proteins today, we're doing chicken, or we're gonna do this like veggie ground, like soy protein essentially. It's really good. I highly recommend it. This one is like the Light Life. It's lean. It's not too fatty or anything like that. But we'll start off with the veggie one, just because that needs to simmer a little bit more to soak in all the flavors. Since of course we're not coming with any of the natural flavors of meat that would be there. But yeah, this one has a pretty good texture to it as well. So high recommendation, and it's really not that expensive. I'm gonna open this up, and it's about, let's see, how large is this package? That's like, I think, almost 400 grams of it. So I like to use about half if I'm doing like enough for myself and someone else, just because it's also good to like space it out, and it stays pretty well for a long period of time. So yeah, of course, because it's like veggie protein, it's more of a vlog, and you're gonna have to do a bit more mixing. So you're gonna want to start by breaking that down quite a bit, and you're just gonna break it into a couple pieces. It might take you a while with like a spoon or a fork. But yeah, you're just gonna break that down, and while you're doing that, your veggies are like stirring it nicely together and getting nice and softened and broken down. But yeah, it's nice to start with your sauce just because you have a little bit more time for the flavors to come together, so that when your meat is cooking pretty quickly, then when it comes to the pasta that you've probably already pre-cooked or might be cooking at the same time, you kind of just throw it all together in whatever mix that you like. So yeah, you'll know in whatever mix that how I'm doing this today is not doing everything in one pot. You definitely could. I mean, you might want to cook your chicken on the side or your beef or whatever you're choosing to do. But it's nice to do that if you have like multiple people over. That way you can meet different people's like, dietary needs. Yeah, serve more people at once. So once you've broken that down on the side, I'm just gonna grab this like the spice mix we used. So there's probably about, I want to say three healthy tablespoons of seasoning here, and I'm just gonna use about a tablespoon per item that I'm using it for. I'm just gonna take that and sprinkle it directly into the mix. We have probably just a little bit more. And kind of like you would do ground beef. So if you're like newly transitioning into using like meat substitutes or like more vegan options, then you kind of just treat it like you normally would. It's just kind of an easier product to use just because it's pretty yummy. It tastes kind of like what you're used to, but it's a little bit healthier if you're trying to do like a little vegan vegetarian lifestyle. But yeah, so I'm just gonna have it kind of mixed in there. It'll be easier once it goes into the actual pan. I'm just gonna put that on the side, and that's time you can check what's in your pan and just maybe mix things around a little bit. I'm gonna take the opportunity to turn the heat back up again. There we go. All right, so while that's all coming together, now we can do the chicken, and this is like pretty easy, even though it can kind of seem overwhelming. I don't know if anyone wants to put like what their favorite like option is, if they would be more for like the meat or more for the non-meat options, or if they prefer like chicken over beef. But yeah, you're just gonna use a chicken breast for this. And essentially, you're gonna want to use one for yourself. I'd say like one per person, depending how much you're eating. But I definitely only eat like half of one. I'm going to do this, but you can defrost this ahead of time throughout the day. Again, a lot of this can be prepped, and that's kind of the great thing about it. I'm just going to hop over to this sink. So one of the really great things about chicken breast is that it cooks really quickly. Even though you might see like oven baked chickens when maybe your parents did them, or you watched other family members or people you know cook chicken in the past, it can seem like a really overwhelming thing that has to take like 45 minutes. It really doesn't. And also make sure you're washing your hands every single time you use any kind of meat in any recipe. But as I can like hear that coming together now, what you're going to do with the chicken, essentially you're going to grab your olive oil and that spice mix again, which is why it's really nice to have these things prepped ahead of time. So you're just going to essentially flip the chicken over. There should be a pocket if you can find it. And it makes it really easy to like spread the chicken breast out so it's really flat. And the flatter it is, the faster it cooks, which is really great. So I always try to like make sure that I can get kind of like get in there and really like start to break it apart a little bit. I'm just gonna rinse my hands before I grab the olive oil again. Whole Foods does have some really, really good meat alternative options. It's probably a personal favorite. The One Near Square one is a really good trip to take. You just take the 110 and you'll be there in like 40 minutes. So yeah, you can do like after class, make a shopping trip out of it, and have dinner when you're home. They have they have really good tempura options. They have really, really awesome selections of tofu and like different things you can do with it that are kind of nice. So yeah, just right about now, everything is kind of cooked down nicely with the veggies. So we're going to add in the tomatoes. And I'm going to add the tomato chunks just because the diced tomatoes and crushed tomatoes are already pretty softened. And the goal of putting everything together, I'm just going to put that lid on over again. Put it up a little bit and maybe stir. Is to just get everything cooked down so that it's really soft. Plus those are in the fridge, so we're going to want to give them a little extra time to warm up. But yeah, while those are doing their thing, you're going to take probably just about like maybe just like a half a tablespoon of olive oil. And this is just going to help the spices stick to it. So you can put that on your cutting board. Basically, you're just going to rub the olive oil into it. And you're going to grab more of that seasoning. Again, probably the other tablespoon. And on one side, do like maybe 1/2 tablespoon. And just really kind of like rub that in there. And this way it's already kind of like greased for the pan. And then on the other side, you can take another of these and just shake it over. And that's essentially done. So after this, we're just going to heat up a pan really quickly so that I can get some of them. I'm just going to leave it for a second and rinse my hands. Again, because if we're preparing 2 different things for 2 different people, we really want to make sure that the options are isolated from each other. You're not cross-contaminating anything. All right, so I'm going to use the other burner closest to this because, again, I am sitting and this is not a good ideal position to be in. But all right, so again, you're going to bring your pans to like medium low, let's call it medium heat, like medium high for the first little bit. Just because most of the cooking is going to happen before we do the flip or the stir in the case of the vegan option. So I'm going to set both of these to about like 5 or 6 on there. And here's where there's like a slight difference. So since we already did put a little bit of olive oil on the chicken, we really don't need to add that much. I'm just going to put a little splash of it just because as much as I'm using a non-stick pan, we don't want any room for accidents. And then for the vegan option, I have like this vegan, I have vegan butter essentially, which is kind of going to make those juices come together a little bit and might replicate that like taste of a nice ground beef sauce that you're used to. So I'm going to take about like a normal cooking, like not cooking tablespoon, I guess like a dining tablespoon. Just kind of like let that melt down in there. I might use another spoon to help me get that. There we go. But yeah, so while those heat up, there's a lot of different things you can do beyond pasta in residence. Definitely with the limitations of your kitchen that you have. But like, say you're at OPH and you want to do, I don't know, like macaroni and cheese, but you don't want to just be like the little KD containers. If you have a mini fridge, and emphasis on having a mini fridge or knowing somebody with a mini fridge, but probably your roommate, because of course with COVID, you want to make sure that you're kind of keeping in that bubble. But something you can do is take like take the noodles out of it and make the noodles on their own. And then grate a little bit of cheese or like add cream cheese to it. And like when you add like the dairy and everything like that, like what you can take like any cheese you like. I really liked adding like Havarti to mine. I really liked adding Parmesan. That was really yummy too. And you can kind of just like mix it up a little bit. You can also go to the grocery store and say you want to do like chicken Alfredo, but with KD. You can make the pasta in the microwave. Heat up in a separate bowl. If you like bring a bowl with you to school, you can heat up some of like say the pre-cooked chicken that comes in like some of the little baggies of the deli section. And then once you heat those two up, you can kind of mix those together. When you add a little bit of the cream cheese, add a little bit of like a shredded cheese to it. Of course, like the hot water or the if you want to use milk, a little bit of butter that you can keep that like in your mini fridge and mix that together. And that's like a solid gourmet on a budget chicken Alfredo. That's really yummy. I'm just gonna take the chicken now and put it into our pan. So yeah. And because I'm just gonna cook for about 5 to 7 minutes on each side, I'm just gonna make sure that it's really is on medium heat so I'm not burning anything. And I'm actually gonna cover it with a lid so that I can keep all the juices inside of it. And then for the veggie option, I'm just going to take that ground like soy, mixed in with our spices. And you'll notice it does stick together quite a bit. It's use the butter spoon that we had before. But that's completely fine. It just kind of takes a second to warm up and break up a little bit. We'll leave that there. So once you're done, pretty much done with your cutting board, you can start cleaning, which I would normally start doing now, but hopping around is really not going to be a nice cleaning process to watch. But right about now, you'll notice that the sauce has kind of come together really nicely. And this is where we're going to start to add all of the seasonings that should go in it as well. So we're going to give it a stir. And at this point, the tomatoes are pretty soft, which is ideal because there is, of course, a little bit more cooking time to go, but this is a good place to be at before you add in those fresh tomatoes. So I have an entire can, but I'm really not going to use the full can. I like to measure things in terms of like mini bowl cups. So I'm going to add about like just over half a mini bowl cup. And the chicken will pop quite a bit just when you do cover it, so make sure that you're aware of that and like kind of spin back. Always like wearing oven mitts if you need to be like handling anything hot. But yeah, so I'm just gonna stir in those crushed tomatoes. And then I'm also gonna take the spice mix that we have. So there's probably about a tablespoon and a half left. Yes, absolutely, because if you burn your seasonings, that's gonna change the flavor of your food and all that prep work you did to try to really get that flavor in there before it's going to be warm. So yeah, we're just gonna take the seasonings, and I like to add kind of the additional thing I like to put in the sauce. Yes, especially when frying things. But I like to put in a little bit of the red chili flakes, and that's just because I really like spice in my food. If you don't, that's cool. That's cool too. Definitely stick with like the white pepper, the black pepper. Those are quite yummy on their own, and they do add a little bit of a kick. But like the really good restaurant quality food you have is just kind of about like layering things in. Like you'll notice in the chat when like in increments, so that you're not dumping everything in a pan and letting it sit, but you're giving time for everything to develop. So I'm actually gonna add a little sprinkle of white pepper to this. And just a little bit, because white pepper has its own like distinct flavor. Alright, and if you want to, I like things to be like not sweetened, but you'll find that there's actually sugar and like honey or anything else in sauces when you get them, most often again in like veggie-based sauces like tomato sauce or a bell pepper sauce. So I'm actually gonna add a little bit of honey to mine just so that it sweetens it nicely. You need a tiny amount. You're not trying to make this like, you can make it a sweet and sour sauce if you want to, but that's definitely not the goal here. It's just to, again, add something else to make all those other flavors stand out really nicely. We can cover that again. And because everything's kind of softened up, I'm just going to lower the heat on that one to like between 3 and 4, so it's going to be like medium low. And at this point, I can kind of look over at my chicken. And I can see that the edges are starting to whiten up, which means that that side is pretty much like getting nice and cooked. And then I'm also checking on the veggie ground, and I can notice that one side of it is getting browned pretty nicely. So you can look at this kind of the same way that you're used to doing ground beef. And you can tell when one side is brown, it's probably cooked pretty well. So just give it another stir. And now after, the difference between the chicken and the veggie for me is I like to let the chicken be covered for the first like minute or two, that it's just cooking like kind of openly, and then I'll cover the veggie for the second round. When I eventually flip the chicken, I'll switch the lid over again, just to keep like all the moisture inside of it. But yeah, so that's gonna rest for a little bit. And I'll add in a couple more veggies later, but we're gonna get started on the cornstarch mix because that's gonna help the sauce to really thicken up and bind together a little bit before we add the pasta sauce in. Potatoes. So with cornstarch, you don't need to like directly shake this in. You actually should not shake it in directly. You want to mix it in with cold water, a little bit of cold water first, not hot, which kind of seems counterintuitive, but it's just because the cornstarch kind of clumps up very easily. So make sure that because it was in hot water, then you could just dump it in the sauce. So you're gonna take like a little cup or a mug, or another little bowl. I'm just gonna rinse out one of my many pink bowls that I have. Ready. And so you can get like cold, you can use like tap water or filtered water. I'm gonna use filtered water from the fridge just because I like that a little bit better. But before I do that, I'm just gonna flip the chicken because I'm noticing that it's ready to go. So yeah, and that's nice. And you can absolutely add like a little bit more olive oil as you go, because as much as you did add enough for the one side, you want to make sure that it's not going to stick, especially when it goes on the other side, because most of the oil is already burned off. So you really don't need like that much water, to be completely honest. Probably just like 2-3 tablespoons of water, so like a quarter of a mini pink bowl. Spices really do kick back sometimes though, so it's good for your family as well. Which might be kind of loud, but let me know if you can still hear me in the chat. If I'm like, this is way too loud, then I'll adjust. point, most of your proteins should be done, and so accordingly, I kind of like to take things off the heat at this point, just because the protein, like the veggie protein, is pretty much already like caramelized and is good. The chicken is essentially just finishing up, and honestly should be done by this point. And you want to give yourself about like 5 minutes before you mix everything together to let your like proteins rest, so that they keep all the flavors in there. Because if you cut them open, like dig right into them right away, then it might not like kind of mix together as well as you want it to. So just checking in on the sauce again. Open that up. And grab that cornstarch again from before. I'm just using about just about 2 teaspoons. Just gonna whisk that together. Just until it's like, it's called like a cornstarch slurry, but it kind of just, because it kind of just looks like messy water, or like mixed like kind of like foggy water. So once you have that together, you're just gonna add that in, and that'll slowly bind everything together. Alright, so at this point, you can, yes, it really does like help keep all the proteins moist. So with that, we're gonna take out the chicken that is like definitely cooked through at this point, and it's pretty juicy. But we're gonna leave that on the side for about 3 to 5 minutes, like minimum. You may want to cut into that right away, but if you do, you're just gonna see like all the water that's like it's holding, which has all of your flavor in there. It's kind of like go right out, which is not the point of what you want to do. So just gonna take this pot off the stove, and you can let your pots cool down on the side. For the veggie pot, like I'm gonna definitely let the chicken one cool down because it has a lot of oil in there, but the veggie soaks up the butter pretty well. If you're gonna go put a pot in the sink to cool it down, make sure that you're not like putting a ton of cold water in it right away, or it's gonna come back and make a lot of smoke for you. What you can do is like flip the pot over and then cool down the bottom, and then once that's cooled down, fill it up on the top, and that's kind of like I do. Cool down my pots so I know I need them again. But until then, the sauce is kind of doing its thing. At this point, you can start to get like a bowl that you may be wanting to do. I am probably going to eat the chicken one for now, and leave that veggie on the side. But what you can do for the veggie one is once the veggie is rested and like so is the sauce and it's all like bound together really well, you can take like a bit of the veggie ground if you want to mix it with the sauce, but I assume you do. And just like put that all in one bowl with your pasta, mix it up, and it's kind of like just your regular, like I think it's called a bolognese sauce, that you would have with like ground beef. But for the chicken, we're just gonna add a little bit of pasta water to the pasta sauce so that it helps like stick and bind to the pasta sauce noodles that we're gonna put in. So when I cooked my pasta earlier, I saved some of the water on the side, and I kind of had that sitting there for a while along with my cooked pasta, and that will really just help it stick to the noodles so it's not kind of just like a watery mess when you do that. And I have quite a bit here, but you really don't need like all of it. I would just say to add like maybe like a quarter of a cup, anything you're doing. So one of these little like IKEA boys, you're just gonna scoop that and just add some, maybe a little bit more because I have quite a bit here. The point isn't really to add like a ton of water to your sauce. Some people like instead of adding any water to their sauce or any liquids, they'll go for like a lot of dry or like concentrated ingredients, like a lot of tomato paste. They'll really make sure that those, like they're not getting a lot of tomato juices, and then they'll do a ton of pasta water, so it like really binds well. You can do that, but it kind of does work and give you the same result either way. And just as all of that is like finally coming together, now you can take the time to like clean things up a little bit so that when it's time for you to actually eat, you can actually get to sit down and focus on doing that, which is really nice. But as I clean up just a couple of the things here, I would just like, and if anybody has any ideas about like what they want to do with this, or like if they'd sub anything out, maybe you prefer a white sauce to a marinara sauce, or like maybe you have like a favorite spot where you've had your favorite marinara sauce. I would definitely be down to hear about those as well. But I'm just going to get all my spices in order so that when this is ready to go, I am 100% ready to eat it, and that is all I can focus on. So for my purposes, I'm going to be throwing this all in like one giant bowl, just because I'm going to eat it all in one giant heap. You can plate this very nicely. You can like cut up the chicken. You know, maybe that's what we'll do. Maybe we'll cut the chicken up nicely on the plate and have it like nice and presentable. I'm going to put my plate on the side over here. Kind of start my stack of all the things that I have to get in order. But I'm just going to grab my knife. We'll probably rinse it off again since it's been a while since I used it. I'm going to dry that off nicely. And now you can take the time to like cut that chicken breast, and you'll see that it holds the juices a lot better. It should be cooked white all the way through. If it is not, make sure it is, because salmonella is not a fun way to like start your meal. You will probably not be eating anything else that's really yummy for a while if you do that. But this chicken is definitely nicely cooked through. I'm just gonna take a little bit out and maybe put it on the plate, like my restaurant style presentation that is going to be. That would probably get me fired at any actual restaurant because it's so subpar. We're just gonna put the chicken on one side of the plate. I can put this here now. And because, again, I do kind of want my pasta in a bowl, and maybe I just want to put my chicken in as I'm going, I'm just going to take now this is pretty much done. I can use a spoon with a giant ladle, really, because it's quite a deep pan. I'm going to get some of that sauce. And again, my sauce is like pretty chunky because that's how I like it. But if you want to say this is like one smooth sauce, all of this work is kind of like blend it all into one, and it'll be like your regular pasta sauce. But I have added that. And now that it's nicely paired with the pasta water, it's like thickened up a little bit. I have this like one giant bowl of pasta here from before, so that it would be nice and ready for this moment. It's still warm. So I have about like 2 to 3 cups. That can be like a good serving for you and like maybe your roommates, depending on how much everyone wants to eat. But I'm probably just gonna dump a little bit of this in here. Give that a stir. And if you wanted to add any like cheese on the top, I didn't add any cheese into mine because dairy is not my friend. But if you did want to add cheese, like it's really hot, so you can definitely like put some on top, melt it, and it'll be really yummy. But yeah, so we have if I can put this all together. Most of my sauce is at the bottom because I still need to stir this. But as you go, you can like add your chicken in. I kind of like to do that where if I like decide I just want to eat a bowl of like veggie sauce and have my chicken afterwards, that's really yummy. But it's all together. So we have our bowl of our pasta. I use like I think it's rotini. Tricolor rotini, so it's like a little bit healthier, I guess. And yeah, I'm gonna have my braised chicken. It's sitting there quite nicely. I can taste it, see if it's good. If it's not, I apologize, but I'm pretty sure it will be. See the chicken. We'll get a big bite of this. We'll take a small piece. There we go. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's really good. That's really good. Yeah, that's pretty solid. I am proud of myself because I was kind of worried. a second there. That's really awesome. Let's do that. Let's do the pasta too. Let's see. I give myself like 10 out of 10 stars for that one. But yeah, that only took about an hour. I have my sauce still going to keep it nice and hot. I'm gonna have it simmering just so it's not like off the walls. But that's that. I can turn this off now since my frying things are done, and I can lower my voice and stop yelling. But yeah, that's all that I have for you today. So just like recap again, we did like the tomato garlic sauce, which is 10 out of 10. Now I'm like really excited to eat that. Tomato garlic sauce, we started with the sauce so it can marinate really well. And just like the flavors could come together so that by the time we were eating at the end, like that's been sitting there for honestly about 40 minutes now. Started your chicken or your other protein. That's also going to be really great to like if you want to add some moisture to that, feel free to add the sauce in and eat it however you want. But all in about an hour, you could have also cooked your pasta at the same time while doing this too. You can have a really awesome meal for like, this is going to feed me today, probably tonight, probably tomorrow, and maybe the next night if I eat this all by myself. If I share it with my roommate, maybe it'll last till tonight. But yeah, that's all that we have. So thank you for watching. Please like go out to any other orientation events that you find to be interesting. Thank you for joining us for most of the live series. I'm glad that if you saw anything else, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you saw like the bullet journaling was really fun. The campus tour was really entertaining. But yeah, thank you for coming out to this one, and I hope you have a good rest of your week. So bye bye.